The piercing alarm went off at exactly 6:30 a.m., slicing through the quiet morning. My heart dropped instantly. I knew that sound. Sarah's blood sugar had crashed. My 17-year-old daughter has type 1 diabetes, and after years of living with it, I could recognize every alert without even opening my eyes. This one meant danger. I rushed to her room and found her sitting up, hands trembling as she reached for her glucose tablets. "Dad, I'm at 65 and falling," she whispered, her words slightly slurred from hypoglycemia. "Okay, sweetheart. 3 tablets. Slow breaths," I said calmly, helping her steady herself. "We'll check again in 15 minutes. Diabetes doesn't care about time, sleep, or plans. It demands constant attention. One mistake can be fatal." Sarah was diagnosed when she was just 8 years old. I still remember the day she collapsed at school, her blood sugar over 600. The doctors told me that if we'd waited a few more hours, she might not have survived. Since then, our lives had revolved around insulin doses, carb counts, glucose checks, and the constant fear that never fully goes away. By 7 a.m., her levels were stable enough for school. She moved through her routine with the quiet, disciplined diabetes had forced her to learn far too young. Checking her monitor, calculating insulin, packing emergency supplies into her backpack. "I'll sit outside and wait for Emma," Sarah said. "My numbers are still a little shaky. I want to keep an eye on them." "Good call," I replied. "Call me immediately if anything feels off." She sat down on our front porch steps, well within our property line, clearly marked by a decorative border. She pulled out her phone and opened her continuous glucose monitor app, a device that had literally saved her life more times than I could count. That's when the peace shattered. "Get away from my fence." The shrill scream cut through the air like glass. I looked out the kitchen window and felt my stomach tighten. Margaret Whitfield, the HOA chairwoman, was storming across her yard toward my daughter. My fear wasn't anger. It was panic. Sarah had just come out of dangerous low. Stress could send her blood sugar spiraling again. Margaret had ruled our neighborhood for 3 years like a self-appointed dictator. She obsessed over property lines, grass length, paint shades, anything she could control. Neighbors whispered about her, avoided her, warned newcomers about her. But today, she wasn't yelling at me. She was screaming at my medically vulnerable child. Margaret stopped just feet from Sarah and stared at the insulin pump clipped to her waistband with open disgust. "That's drug equipment," she snapped. "You're not fooling anyone. I'm calling the police." Sarah looked up at her, confused, pale, still weak. And in that moment, Margaret Whitfield crossed a line she would never recover from. Margaret Whitfield had once tried to fine a neighbor $500 over a mailbox that didn't meet her so-called regulations. But what she'd been doing to Sarah lately went far beyond HOA nonsense. Over the past few months, her fixation had turned personal and cruel. "Ma'am, I'm on my own property," Sarah said softly, still focused on the screen of her phone where her blood glucose numbers updated in real time. She didn't have the strength for confrontation that morning. "Don't lie to me, you little delinquent," Margaret shrieked. "You're always lurking around at strange hours. I've been watching you. Planning something, I'm sure." I stepped outside immediately. One look at Sarah told me everything. Pale skin, trembling hands. Her blood sugar still wasn't stable. "Margaret," I said firmly, "she's waiting for a ride to school. She's not bothering anyone." Margaret's face twisted with the same self-righteous fury that had made her infamous in the neighborhood. "Judge Harrison, your daughter is a danger to this community," she snapped. "I've seen the needles, the equipment. She's clearly on drugs." The accusation hit me like a punch. "That's medical equipment," I said through clenched teeth. "Sarah has type 1 diabetes." "Diabetes?" Margaret laughed harshly. "How convenient. A perfect excuse for a teenage drug addict." Sarah's hands began to shake harder. Stress was sending her numbers spiraling. "I've had diabetes since I was 8, Sarah said quietly. "I'm not doing anything wrong." 8 years old? Please, Margaret scoffed, stepping closer to the property line. What kind of parent invents a fake illness? I know drug paraphernalia when I see it. And you're using your powerful job to cover it up. This wasn't new. Margaret had called Sarah's school. She'd contacted child services. She'd even reported us for prescription fraud. Every claim had been dismissed because diabetes is real. But the damage to Sarah had been very real. She stopped checking her blood sugar in public. She hid her supplies. She felt ashamed of the very thing keeping her alive. Enough, I said sharply. This harassment stops now. Harassment? Margaret sneered. I'm protecting this neighborhood from a spoiled, manipulative drug addict. Sarah's glucose monitor suddenly began to beep, loud and urgent. Her blood sugar was rising dangerously from stress. She reached for her insulin pen. Margaret exploded. There, she screamed. She's injecting drugs right in front of us. That's insulin, I said. Without it, she could go into a coma. Or die. Oh, spare me, Margaret snapped. I know an addict when I see one. Sarah's knees buckled. Her numbers dropped just as fast as they'd spiked. Dad, I don't feel good, she whispered, her speech slowing. I think I'm going low again. I rushed to her side. Glucose tablets. Now. Margaret watched with wild suspicion. Look at her, she said loudly. Slurred speech. Shaking. Classic drug symptoms. Those are symptoms of hypoglycemia, I shot back. This is a medical emergency. Margaret pulled out her phone with a satisfied smile. I'm calling the police. Don't be ridiculous, I warned. Ridiculous? She said gleefully. A drug-addicted teenager and her federal judge father. This ends today. She dialed 911. Hello, yes. There's active drug use and child endangerment. A teenage girl injecting drugs while her father enables her. He's a federal judge and using his influence. Sarah began to cry. Not from pain, but from heartbreak. Why does she hate me? She whispered. Some people confuse control with righteousness. I said softly. This isn't about you. Minutes later, 2 officers arrived. Officer Davis and Officer Chin listened as Margaret dramatically pointed at Sarah. She's high. Just look at her. Sarah sat quietly now, glucose stabilizing. Miss, are you okay? Officer Chin asked. Yes, sir, Sarah replied politely. I'm diabetic. I had low blood sugar. I provided her medical ID, prescriptions, and documentation. Margaret snatched the card away. These can be faked. Ma'am, return that immediately, Officer Chin ordered. I will not. This is fraud. Diabetes is a legitimate medical condition, Officer Davis said firmly. This call appears unfounded. You're all in on it. Margaret screamed. He paid you off. Officer Davis's expression hardened. Did you just accuse officers of taking bribes? Margaret hesitated, then doubled down. Test her for drugs. We don't perform medical tests over neighborhood disputes, Officer Chin replied. This is harassment. That girl is ruining property values with her fake illness. Margaret yelled. That was it. Officers, I said calmly. I want to file a formal harassment complaint. She's been verbally abusing my minor child. Margaret laughed nervously. He's trying to intimidate me. Officer Davis began writing. Ma'am, filing false police reports is a crime. Harassing a minor is also illegal. Panic flickered across Margaret's face. This isn't over, she hissed. Then she did the unforgivable. She lunged forward and grabbed Sarah's insulin pump, yanking at it. I'm confiscating this. Ma'am, step back now, Officer Chin shouted. Margaret ignored him. That's when the handcuffs came out. She was arrested on the spot for false reporting, harassment, and assault. As they led her away, Margaret screamed about conspiracies and corruption. Sarah held my hand tightly. Dad, am I in trouble? I knelt beside her. No, sweetheart. You did nothing wrong. And that was the day Margaret Whitfield learned a hard lesson. Medical ignorance is dangerous. Cruelty has consequences. And some lines, once crossed, can never be uncrossed. Margaret screamed as the officers pulled her hands behind her back. You can't arrest me, she shouted. I'm the HOA chairwoman. That man is corrupt. He's a federal judge using his power to protect a drug addict. The neighbors had started gathering by then. Phones were out. Whispers spread fast. Sarah clutched my arm, shaking, not from low blood sugar this time, but from shock. Dad, please don't let her touch me again, she whispered. I won't, I said quietly. Ever. Margaret was charged that morning with false police reporting, harassment of a minor, and assault for grabbing medical equipment from a disabled child. The story didn't stay local for long. Within days, it was everywhere. 3 weeks later, the courtroom was packed. Margaret had fired 2 public defenders, insisting they were part of the system. She chose to represent herself. That decision destroyed her. When the prosecutor laid out the evidence, 911 recordings, school reports, CPS complaints, medical documentation, police body cam footage, the jury watched in stunned silence. Then Margaret took the stand. "I was protecting my neighborhood," she said smugly. "That girl was clearly using illegal substances. Her father only got away with it because of his position in the federal court." The courtroom gasped. The prosecutor leaned forward calmly. "Mrs. Whitfield, are you aware that type 1 diabetes is a medically recognized, life-threatening condition?" "So-called diabetes," Margaret scoffed. "I've done my research online." "What medical qualifications do you have?" "I don't need any," she snapped. "HOA training teaches us to spot suspicious behavior." Even the judge paused. "So you believe HOA training allows you to override doctors, hospitals, and medical records?" "Common sense does," Margaret replied confidently. That was the moment everything shifted. The prosecutor stood. "Your Honor, at this time the prosecution would like to formally note that the victim's father, Judge Harrison, has not exercised his position at any point in this case." The courtroom turned, slowly, toward me. Margaret's face drained of color. "Wait," she stammered. You really are?" "Yes," the judge said firmly. "And unlike you, Judge Harrison followed the law." Margaret collapsed back into her chair. The verdict didn't take long. Guilty on all counts. Margaret was sentenced to probation, mandatory mental health evaluation, community service with disability advocacy groups, and a permanent restraining order protecting Sarah and our family. Outside the courthouse, reporters asked Sarah how she felt. She took a deep breath. "I just want people to understand," she said softly. "Diabetes isn't a choice. I'm not doing drugs. I'm trying to stay alive." Her words reached families across the country. Messages poured in from parents, teens, diabetics who had faced the same ignorance. That morning, Sarah sat on the porch again. This time, no one yelled. No one accused. She checked her monitor, smiled slightly, and looked at me. "Dad, I think I'm finally okay." And she was.
The story's over. Now let's get real. Imagine standing there on all that land, every inch legally yours. If you were in the owner's shoes, what would you do? Let them stay, sell the homes, or pull some other wild move? Drop your answer in the comments and let's see who's the boldest.